Robert ShedLog for Sunday, 2nd of August 2020, Part 2. Hello, I'm Robert and welcome back to my shed again. I am looking at the Veritas Small Plough Plane. This comes in 4 bits. The fence, the cutter or blade, cutting blade. Standard, you get 1/4 inch cutting blade standard. The depth stop, which although it's metal, it doesn't mark your work. And the body or skate, which has a handle, according to the manual, not a tote. No idea why. I would call it a tote because it's on a plane, but that's wrong. So, what can I say about this? I want to be critical. I'm trying to be critical. It's really hard. It's a beautifully made tool. Everything is finger tight. So you put the depth stop on. It does wobble a little bit, but that just seems to keep it in line. You've not found any issues with wobbling. Only issue I've had with the depth stop is that sometimes you get a little bit of swarf caught under it, and so when you've finished, when it stops cutting, you need to check that you don't have any extra swarf lying around. It's not very good at ejecting swarf, but then no metal plough planes are. The blade fits in beautifully. Only criticism of this is if you want a particularly wide blade, then you have to spend I think it's 40 or 80 Canadian dollars on a replacement body, replacement skate. That has a second clamp on it that lets you put in very wide blades because they become unstable, apparently. But this will do anything up to 32nd of an inch, I think. Wide blade conversion kit, you know, let's actually say, I'm saying that somewhere, but check before you buy. To be honest, I don't see the problem. If you want to do a wider cut twice. The fence, it's on here. It's absolutely beautiful in action. Everything's finger tight. Nothing needs adjustment with a screwdriver or anything, unlike some of the older planes, older plough planes. There's even a 1/16 of an inch recess inside the skate, so inside the fence, so that you can reduce your cut by 1/16, so your 1/4 inch blade becomes, just saying it's this bit here, it becomes a 3/16 of an inch. So it's really quite nice. There's quite a lot you can buy with it. Oh, by the way, it says what you can cut upon 32nd of an inch cut with a 1/16 inch blade as a rebate. You can't. That's a typo in the manual. Which is 5 pages of French and 5 pages of English, and one of those 5 pages is just a list of all the accessories. Accessories include the wide blade conversion kit and various blades. So I've got the 6mm blade, which is really rare at the moment. It's really not. It's something to do with lockdown. But as I say this in August, they're expecting some of the Imperial blades later this month and metric blades later this year, but there's a shortage of them. I've got a 5/16 of an inch as well, just for having an extra blade. There's also a couple of beading blades. I've got the 1/4 and the 1/8, and these actually say Veritas 1/8 and 1/4 on them, which would be really handy if this one did, because this looks identical to the 1/4 inch, apart from the fact it's 0.135 millimeters narrower. In order to cut a groove, you need from the bottom of the groove to the top of the vise a depth of a little over 1/2 inch. So this one, if I want to put this on here, I can cut a groove relatively deep on this relatively thin piece of wood. So I'm quite happy with that. This is, by the way, one of the pieces from the leftover piece from when I was making a tool store. And I sink all of these grooves using the Veritas Small Plough Plane, which is a fraction of the size of the Veritas Small Plough Plane. Veritas do not make a plough plane larger than the Veritas Small Plough Plane. They were going to, apparently, they decided to make a combination plane instead. instead of a large plough plane. Combination planes are better at cutting across the groove because they have things called nickers. That's N-I-C-K-E-R-S. If you try and cut across the grain with one of these, you get a bit of tear out. You'll see a little bit of tear out on there. It's not much. And obviously it depends what kind of wood you're using. I don't know what kind of wood this is. It's a bit of water damaged scrap. I cut 2 lines with a marking gauge and then just went for it. A little bit of tear out where it comes out. And I tied it at the bottom with the router plane. Worked pretty well. I also did a groove along here, which is absolutely spot on, apart from a little bit of tear out around the knot. And a rebate here, which missed the knot enough to be absolutely smooth. Even did a cross grain groove on the end grain groove to extend this groove around. It's absolutely perfect. Apart from a little bit of tear out on the reveal side, that's spot on. I love it to pieces. That's a glowing review from me. Just to make that clear. When I was doing this, the right tool for the job was this one, not the one I actually used. And sorry for the previous video, because it's not entirely wrong to use one of these grooves on these planes on grooves, on side grain grooves, but it's not for sinking them. It's for tidying them up and finishing them and polishing them off. This, by the way, the plane has proved its worth since then in cutting rebates for hinges, hinge cutouts, and that's absolutely great at that. Just to be clear, I'm not trying to talk down that tool at all. I do wish that I bought the medium because that stops as a square cross section, it will stop the thing moving from side to side. It's the only reason. This one, however, doesn't move from side to side because it's got this locking nut and this locking clamp. It's absolutely beautiful. I'm going to try one of these. I'm going to try sinking a groove on these just to see how much better or worse this is compared to what I had before. First thing to do is to set the fence. So, set the fence, put the blade in the middle. If I had one of the other pieces, I'd use that, but they're all in the job now, so set that. Set the depth of cut. I want a depth of cut not very deep, it's about 1/8 of an inch, half the width of the blade. Should do fine. I've just removed the fence, it wasn't quite on tight. Yep. You do have to make sure the fence is down properly. As it is just finger tight, but you have to make sure it is finger tight. Quick test to make sure it doesn't rattle. Anything rattling means it's not in tightly. Okay, and then we start cutting. As with the router plane, we start at the end, work our way back, and then we cut along the whole thing. So, I'm going to just try this. Can you see that? Yes, I think you can. Hope you can. Oh, I've got still set a depth of cut. I'm quite deep here. I'm just set it to the minimum. It's just protruding from the blade. Oh, that's one thing I noticed as well. On this one, it was slightly off square. So I was able to get it so it would cut on one side and not the other, and then I wasn't getting any progression. Okay, that's definitely something like that. Now, you'll see the build-up of swarf there. You have to keep clearing the swarf as you go. But the knot seems to have just seems to have ignored it. So that's not bad. I'm not there yet. I've got quite a low depth of cut because of the knot, but it seems quite reasonable so far. Okay, I'm definitely cutting this side of the knot. You have to watch out for swarf under the stop as well, otherwise you'll finish and you haven't. And yeah, it's still cutting, so I'm not going to stop yet. I'm quite close. The biggest danger you have is tilting it side to side. Yeah, actually moving the voice there. Okay, that's no longer cutting. No swarf under the depth stop, so I'm done. I think that was reasonably fast, even though with quite a small depth of cut. I could probably have done this in 3 passes with the router plane, but I would have had to stop and do the knot with hammer and chisel, and that's how I injured myself. So, okay, I've got a little bit of tear out just here. At the end, I'm not quite sure what happened there. Apart from that, that is, I think, a perfect groove. And just one piece of material on the top of the wall. Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't need a bit of sandpaper maybe to smooth it off, or just a nail even. But that's good enough. I could have used that. And that was a lot less effort than moving it back and forth in the vise with the router plane and my makeshift fence. So, in conclusion, Veritas Small Plough Plane, if you want to cut grooves along the grain, this tool will do it very quickly. If you have knots, watch out, because you'll probably end up with a little bit of damage around the knot. But for smooth grain wood, on the grain, this is the tool to use. So, that is my review of the Veritas Small Router Plane. Plough Plane. That is my review of the Veritas Small Plough Plane. If you have any comments, questions or suggestions or some things I could review next, comment I guess. And otherwise I will see you relatively soon. That's all for tonight anyway, so see you soon. Ta-ta! Robert's ShedLog for this Sunday, the 2nd of